So, hi to everybody. It's a great honor to be able to spend this time with you. I know this is being pre-recorded, but to all the other people who are watching, I'm really happy to be part of this. I thought I'd start with a few words about who I am, where I'm from, etc., and then speak a bit about Masorti in Israel and what we're going through at the moment, and then we'll move into questions. And of course, if there's anything along the way that needs that you think I need to explain a bit more, please jump in and ask for more information. So I'll start a few words about myself. I'm Rabbi Mikie Goldstein. I'm originally, as you can probably hear, originally from the UK. I hail from Liverpool. I grew up in a modern Orthodox religious Zionist family. I went to the Bnei Akiva youth movement, which some of you may be familiar with. And my parents, my education, my youth movement, etc., instilled in me the Zionist ideas and the importance of having a strong center in Israel, as well as having strong Jewish places around the world. And I spent 2 years in Israel after high school. I went to a Hesder yeshiva where they do army as well as study. And in my second year in Israel, I actually went into the army as a volunteer at the time. I went back to England after that to study Middle Eastern studies in Manchester. And in 1989, I made Aliyah proper and started a long career, first of all, in fundraising, in resource development. And after I worked for the Hebrew University for a number of years, and then eventually I found myself looking for a job. And I didn't know much about Masorti conservative Judaism at the time. I knew about Orthodoxy, I knew about Reform, having come out of the closet once I made Aliyah. I didn't find a place as a gay man in the Orthodox world in Israel, and type of left my Judaism to just wherever it wanted it to land. And then I came across the Masorti movement in Israel whilst looking for a job. And not only did I get the job as heading the development unit in Jerusalem, but I also found a religious home. So much so, this was like in 2002. And after taking around a group of students from JTS and Ziegler as the development officer of the Masorti, we like to introduce the students to what we do in Israel. And this was the first cohort in 2009, the first cohort that had gay and lesbian students from JTS and Ziegler. And I said to them, I've reached a point where I might think of going to rabbinical school, but here in Israel, the Shechter Rabbinical School at the time did not accept gay and lesbian students. So I just left it at that. I can say I'd love to go to rabbinical school, but no one can hold me to it because I can't go here in Israel. Long story short, within a year, I was at JTS. Rabbi Denny Nevins, who some of you might know, was the dean at the time. He ensured that I could get there, and I spent 4 years at JTS, 2 of which, my second and third year, I was actually the Gabbai at the Women's League Seminary Synagogue. So I have this wonderful connection as well that I'm very happy to have been able to play that part, both for the Women's League, making sure the shul works properly, but also for the students to be part of their growing process. And when I finished in 2014, I came back to Israel straight away and got a job in what had been my shul in Rehovot, where I still live. They were looking for a rabbi at the time, and for 8 years, from 14 to 22, I was the rabbi here in Rehovot. And then for the last year and a half, I've gone back to work for the movement. And for the last full year now, I've been the director of development, global development for Masorti in Israel, overseeing all fundraising, including in North America, which is the place where we do our most fundraising. So that's a bit about me. A bit about what's going on now. I mean, you all follow the news, and I know it depends which news you watch to what exactly information you get. I must admit, I look at two main sources, one in English, one in Hebrew, both newspapers, or what they call newspapers, but on the internet. And they are my main sources. But I also walk the streets, obviously, and I meet people, and I have family members. We all discuss things. There's no Friday night meal or even midweek meal that people have together that the present situation doesn't come up. And just on a general level, I'll start. I would say there's two camps at the moment. One is the bring them home camp, the people who are really more worried about the hostages than anything else. And I would say that's definitely the camp where I find myself. And the other camp is we must win. We must be victorious. And I say they're different camps because it depends where you put the stress. It's like, obviously, we need to win against Hamas. I don't think, for most, I would say for 99 point whatever percent of Jews around the world, that's not a question. We hear the vocal 1% that's left, perhaps, but I think we all understand that we must somehow make sure that Hamas is not ruling again in Gaza or in anywhere else. But as a Jew and as a rabbi, and something that certainly brought me to the conservative movement was that, yes, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, we're all responsible for each other, but we're also responsible for what happens around us. And as I've seen many spokespeople say, this is not a war that we chose, and therefore it's not about being victorious. It's about ending the war in a way that will be good and hopefully will be best for everybody, and which means that not everybody is going to win exactly what they want as well. But if I get back to the camp I find myself in, bring back the hostages, it's like, I don't think we can win anything if we leave a number of people there. And these are, everybody forms how they feel according to what they see and what they've been through in life. And this is just the way I've come out. I know people who are good friends of mine who, yes, the hostages are important, but the most important thing is to erase Hamas. And I say that's number two. First, bring our people home. And you find that out in the streets as well. Some people get annoyed with the hostage families sometimes for pushing too hard. Other people get annoyed with those who are saying, let's erase Gaza, not just Hamas. But it's a time of war when people, they go to the extremes. And then that's one of the areas where Masorti in Israel is trying to be of help, to rein in those extremes, or at least bring people to speak to each other a bit more, not necessarily to agree, but to understand that there are different perspectives, different ways of looking at things, even though for me it's really difficult to accept a different opinion that I think is against my beliefs. I must listen to these people. And one of the things that Masorti has done very successfully from day 3 of when the hostage families set up encampment outside the IDF headquarters in Tel Aviv, we've been there since day 3, which was about day 9 of the war. We've been there every day at 5 p.m. We do a prayer circle. We call it a prayer circle because we know that people don't want to daven mincha and ma'ariv, most of the people who are there, but they do have a sense of connection to each other. And for a lot of them, God is still part of their Jewish life, even though they might not be religious. And so we've created prayers specially for the situation, prayers that call for the return of the hostages, prayers that refer to the war and how the evacuees should be able to get home, and for the soldiers. And we have the regular prayers for the state of Israel and for IDF soldiers in general. And so we use some of those prayers, and we bring in Israeli songs. Some of them might be modern Israeli songs, some of them might be more Hasidic type Jewish songs, but songs that people know. And every day we arrange that there should be this prayer circle. And where Masorti really shows its colors in its pluralism is that it's not just our rabbis or our people leading this daily prayer service. We've opened it up. So you might find normally there's 2 people leading. So it might be conservative and reform rabbi. It might be an Orthodox person and a secular person. All sorts of possibilities are there. We've opened it up to anyone who is prepared to use what we've set up and recite the prayers and sing songs and not ask for men and women to stand or sit separately. Anyone who can be in that pluralistic space, they're all invited to take part and lead. And I think that's a very important message. One of the main slogans at the moment is "Yachad nenatzeach," together we will win or be victorious. I have my issues with the togetherness and whether we need to be victorious or get results, but the feeling of togetherness is important. And one way of building that is making sure that togetherness means everybody and not pushing out certain people. Besides the prayer circle, Masorti is as involved as any other organization or religious stream. We're part of the fabric of Israeli society. We have one actual kehillah from the Gaza envelope, Stei Nitzan, right in the south of that area, that they've been evacuated to Eilat. And so we're obviously in regular contact with them. Our two connected kibbutzim, Hanaton and Keturah, which some of you may have visited in the past, both of them have taken in evacuees. They now have less than originally they had, but on Keturah, they took in over 200 people. Now I think there's about 100 people still there. And many of them were people who self-evacuated, and the government is not paying their way. And so we've helped Keturah raise money a lot through the federation system that you all know has raised a lot of money for Israel in the last few months. But besides helping people who are directly affected, we've also been sending care packages to our soldiers, those especially those in the reserves. So when they get home, there's a care package waiting for them so they can relax a bit more. And it actually includes craft beer from Kibbutz Keturah. So and also Advat Torah, obviously, because we are the Masorti movement. We've been looking for ways to help in which we can do something special that's for us. It's like everybody's collecting clothes. We don't need to collect clothes. We can be part in our different kehilot around the country are taking part in local initiatives that they can be part in. But as a movement, we're looking for the niche where we can actually make a difference. And so whether it's been helping evacuees in certain places, there in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, there are also a lot of evacuees. So our kehilot there, we're doing a lot of work with the kids, especially the first couple of months when there was no school. So we had volunteers, a lot from our Noam youth movement as well, go to the different hotels and just run like babysitting service, basically, doing some fun stuff, perhaps a little educational stuff. We're beginning to look ahead a bit as well. We're getting into a regular situation where the war is ongoing. A lot of evacuees, not from the actual Gaza envelope area, but from other places have gone back. There's still evacuees in the north who can't go home. But for most of the country, we're living in regular life. There are very few sirens now going off. But we're still all in trauma. But we don't understand what that trauma actually looks like because we're actually in it. And at the moment, we're surviving. And first of all, that's a place where our rabbis and other trained people in pastoral care can help out. Most of the pastoral care that's happening at the moment is within our kehilot, within our people who either have relatives who've been evacuated or even taken hostage. We have from Ra'anana, there is a young woman who was taken hostage. She was in the army, from one of the army bases. And she grew up in the Noam youth movement. And so there's great connection there between our kehillah and the youth there in Ra'anana specifically, but also other people who knew her or who know her. And so that's a catalyst for us to really be involved, and to help out. And so our rabbis are helping people just work through where they are at the moment. And we have to take into account that certainly two of our rabbis have been in reserve duty for many months. Our rabbi in Haifa, David Arias, from day one, he was called up and he's been home a few times, but only gets home every 2 or 3 weeks. He has two little kids, and it's really difficult also for the kihila. Whilst they can do all the regular stuff without their rabbi, but their rabbi is there for the pastoral side as well, but he's not around. So it's made it difficult for them. Also, our Rabbi Yos Baruch in Omer in the south has been very busy. He wasn't actually in the reserves, but he's in the first responder unit in Omer, and has been very involved in that. And between that and doing, he did quite a few funerals as well for people from the area, mainly soldiers. And that's been, so it's like not just the rabbis needing to give pastoral care. We also, from the movement, have to worry about our rabbis themselves and making sure they get the care so they can continue giving care to other people. As we look forward, we're thinking a lot about our Noam youth, especially the 11th and 12th graders who are going to be going into the army in the next year or two. And what will it mean that they've just been through a war at 11th and 12th graders, that some of their friends, slightly older, were in the army and perhaps affected, and some of their friends were at the party by Kibbutz Re'im, where so many were murdered ruthlessly. We need to help this whole group of kids, and we've decided that we're going to try and build programs that will not just be for our Noam youth members, but will also be for any other families who want their kids to go through a program that will help them with some form of post-trauma and preparing them to go to the army. It's like everybody knows in the army something can happen, but now they've seen what can happen. And that's troubling for me. And I hate to think what a 17, 18-year-old kid thinks and how they can process that. So we really want to work a lot on that. We also want to do a lot of work in the south and in the north where people are still evacuated now, but hopefully when they go back, we want to help them in getting over the more spiritual side of things, how they can deal with coming back home and giving them support in that area. And as a religious organization, we do that around Shabbat and around holidays. We're thinking of programming we can prepare that people will feel brings them a sense of community and the fact that they're not alone. A lot of people in post-trauma feel very much alone. So we want to see how we can help people feel more together. At this point, I don't remember all the programs we're working on now, but generally we want to provide a sense of togetherness that is not one that is just saying we should all be together, we're all one people. We've got to give it more content. And so we're beginning to work on Jewish content that speaks to the idea of unity, but not uniformity, for one, about how there's space for everybody. And our CEO, Rakefet Ginsburg, she just put out an article in Jerusalem Post that talks about the fact that we're all afraid of each other, all the different groups in Israel, afraid if we give this one a bit of space, like for us, they don't want to give a space to the Kotel because then they're worried we might grow and other people might like what we do. And we might be afraid of the Haredim because they're not taking full part, and what would happen if they were more integrated. Perhaps it's easier to keep them not integrated. All these different things going on in society, we need to start looking at them anew and afresh and understanding that we are different. We are different groups within one people. And not just that, we're not just one people. In Israel, almost 80% of the population are Jewish, but 18, 19% are Muslim. And then there's a lot, another 1% or so of Christians, and then people of no religion. How can we make space for everybody, but not having to give up who we are? And of course, we won't do this work alone. We've already started working with other organizations on a very basic level at the moment, but we really need to pull together and each organization, each stream of Judaism needs to bring to the table positive things that they are prepared to share with others, and hopefully that will be a way forward. But I'm just thinking about this Shabbat. I'm going to be in Ra'anana with my family, and I'm going to speak at the Masorti Shul in Ra'anana. I'll talk a little bit about Tu B'Shvat, which is coming up this coming week. This is pre-recorded, so it won't be Tu B'Shvat for you by then. But what does the renewal of the Tu B'Shvat suggest to us? It's the change from everything dying out in the winter to the very beginning of life again, as we're still in winter, but we're looking forward already to the spring. The Hashkedia Porachat, the almond tree, is beginning to flower. It's a little bit early this year, but it's this time of year where in Israel we do see a certain amount of regrowth. So what can we learn from that? How can we take that with us? That yes, we go through different seasons in not just the annual seasons that come, but seasons of where our people are and how we're doing, and how we can perhaps pull together at this time. And perhaps we've just been through the darkest part of winter with the terrible tragedy of the onslaught of October the 7th and the ensuing war here and the ensuing anti-Semitism that a lot of people are feeling outside Israel. And when is our turning point going to be? When is our Tu B'Shvat that we will begin to see that things are changing for the better? So I think at that point, that's a good place to perhaps open it up to questions.
I'm going to start with I have two questions. One's a very simple one. Was when you talked about the prayer circle, is it just in Tel Aviv, or is it that is what you're referring to?
Yeah, we do the prayer circle every day in Hostage Square at 5 p.m. Except this coming, which it'll be way over by now, but on special events like Tu B'Shvat, we're going to do a Tu B'Shvat Seder in the square. We're expecting a good few hundred people to that. That'll be at 6 p.m. to make sure that more people can come after work.
Well, I'm picking from among the 6 questions that I have, but the first one is, I'll start. I am suddenly vice president for Women's League International of I'm the Israel chair, and there was no job description, which I like because I can make it up. And what I decided back in March, way before October 7th, if I'm going to do this starting in July of 2024, I want to work with the Kehilot in Israel. Of our 13 regions, and I know you're familiar with the setup of Women's League, there are 13 regions. We connect with each region is connected, partnered with Kehillah. There are more Kehilot than we can partner with, but Southern region is partnered with Darchei Noam. Noam. Did I put the accent in the right place? Noam. Noam.
Noam.
And Sukkot Shalom in Ramot. Before October 7th, I made a connection with Darchei Noam, and I was going to visit October 12th. And I asked her, what can we do? And the flight was canceled, obviously. What can we do to help? And she wasn't sure either. She was very happy that I had called, and we have become friends. But she's still saying that too. This is not a Kehillah that is hearing sirens all the time. They're in a northern central, but different Kehilot have different needs. But what we feel Kol Yisrael Arivim, we want to do something practical, just as you say. What would you suggest be our practical?
Darchei Noam is in Pardes Chana, which is near Chadera. It's slightly north of Netanya, etc. And so it's been quiet. And Sukkot Shalom in Ramat Yishai, not too far away from there as well. They individually as Kehilot probably don't have too many needs, but they will be involved in working with either movement-wide initiatives or local initiatives, and you can get involved in the initiatives that they're working on.
Okay.
I think that would be a great way, besides having, occasional Zooms and updates. And so you get the updates from people in the Kehillah, and they have perhaps people who've got kids in the army or people who have been working on particular projects that can update you. So you get information that's actually from people on the ground, and then work together. Whatever they're doing, work with them. That's what, my best suggestion. So many different projects going on. And so this way, it'll make it easier to choose what to do, see what they're doing, and join in whichever way is possible.
Just asking. And I will say, mutually, it's beneficial
Yeah.
on both sides. I feel they're helping me. And how do my second question, then I'll be quiet. The second question, how do the rabbis, when they're doing all this, how do they support themselves? What is their, who's the pastor? What's the pastoral service to the rabbis?
Right. So together with the Rabbinical Assembly, Masorti has arranged for all our Kehillah rabbis to be able to have either a type of a group therapy type session that was running weekly. I think it's just on a hiatus at the moment, but a place to share. And there was also some one-on-one for rabbis who felt they needed that. And that will obviously continue. We also have a WhatsApp forum where people can just put things out. It's just the Kehillah rabbis, so people understand each other, but we're also into self-care. So we're trying to make sure that people take time off, spend time with family, or doing whatever it is they like doing, making sure they do that. In February, we have our Kehillah rabbis or pulpit rabbis annual seminar. We decided to go ahead with it. It's a 3-day seminar where some of it is study, some of it is like going on a hike to learn about something wherever we're staying nearby, and it's type of a self-care and study seminar. And we decided we must go ahead with it because even if we need to pull the rabbis out for a few days, they really need to get away and just be able to take it easy. And so we're doing what we can, but as you probably know, rabbis aren't always good at taking that care, at getting the self-care and receiving care. So we need to push, but I think we're certainly offering things.
I would like to go next. Hi, Rabbi. Thank you for doing this for us. We're very pleased, and I think we have learned a lot. One of my questions is, and Ann started it, how many conservative rabbis do you have that are doing pastoral care right now? And are you able to pull in rabbis from all over the world to help you, or is that more uncomfortable for the people that are involved because they don't feel that those rabbis understand what's going on? Could you speak to that a little bit?
So that's really interesting because we had a group of rabbis from the States right at the beginning who via the Rabbinical Assembly said, we'd love to come over and be there and help out. We have 22 Kehillah rabbis. We have, like on a regular basis, we have about 60 Kehillot that meet regularly, but only 22 have a rabbi. And then we have another 30 or so, like high holidays and another Kehillot that just join us a few times a year. So we only have 22 pulpit rabbis. Some of them are part-time. And then we have like another 10, 15 rabbis who are either involved directly in pastoral care or are working on that through different organizations at the moment. So there's two issues here. First of all, for the rabbis who are interested in coming from the States, it's like, if you don't speak fluent Hebrew, then it's not going to work. It's like, that's the need for people to be able to communicate fully. And so there are some rabbis like that in the States, but it's not just the language, it's also the culture. And so there are some rabbis in the States who spend a lot of time in Israel, and they could probably do that okay. But for some, it's just so different the way people interact with the rabbi, and what we've been going through, and having been through similar stuff. And if you're not going through exactly the same thing, it could work and it could not work. We're not sure, but it didn't quite work out in the end. It's the language barrier and the culture barrier. But also what we found is that we were very happy to offer our services but we come up against a bit of a, I don't know if it's a brick wall or a window ceiling, you know, but it's like, oh, you're conservative, or worse than that, we just get called reform. And reform in Israel, unfortunately, has become, for many people, almost like a swear word, which is terrible. But yeah, reforming, it's like what they shout at the women of the wall. And people don't understand that, first of all, when we do pastoral care, it's irrelevant what stream of Judaism we're coming from. We're coming to listen, we're coming to be helpful, and we're putting aside what we believe in order to help the person. But Israelis aren't in that place. Pastoral care in Israel is, I would say, almost non-existent. It's like every hospital you go to in the States, there's a pastoral care department. In Israel, what does the rabbi do in hospital? He, because it's always going to be he, is checking up that the food is kosher and that Shabbat gets kept in the way that he thinks Shabbat should be kept. And on Pesach, he'll stop people bringing in bread. What, a rabbi is coming to see how I am and not try and make me put on tefillin or daven or something? People don't understand that can be like that. And so there are a few places in Haifa and Jerusalem where a couple of the hospitals have, but it's not part of the hospital. It's outside organizations that are bringing in. You know, so in general, the population don't know how to take it, how to receive the fact that a rabbi is there to listen to them and care for them. So we have a lot of work to do there in changing that.
Well, if we can help you on this end, please let us know.
Thank you.
And then my second question is, and this is totally different and has nothing to do with what's going on in Israel right now. Will or is a conservative marriage recognized yet in Israel?
No. I'll just give very brief information about that. In Israel proper, right, so in Israel, only marriages performed by rabbis recognized by the state rabbinate are okay for registering as being married. And if you're Jewish, the only place to get married is through the rabbinate, the Orthodox rabbinate. If you're an Orthodox rabbi from New York and you come and do a wedding here, if you do not get the recognition ahead of time, like in the States, you can sometimes get a one-off thing, or a different state, you can get a one-off license to do a marriage. If you don't have that recognition, then your marriage also won't be recognized. You know, so, and that's law in Israel. I do weddings, a few weddings a year. I love doing weddings. Each couple knows that they need to get a civil marriage if they want it to be recognized in Israel. If you're married abroad, say in the States, you automatically have a civil marriage. If you know, to be recognized as married in your country, if that's what you decide to do. I think it's actually illegal in the States to do a religious wedding without a civil wedding, if I'm not mistaken, or in a lot of the states. And so you have automatically, in nearly all cases, you've got a civil wedding, and that is recognized in Israel by the Ministry of the Interior to register the couple as married. And so it doesn't matter who you get married with outside of Israel. As long as you have the civil wedding, it will be registered. Doesn't mean the Rabbanut will accept it. For example, if a convert through us or through Reform, or even through some Orthodox rabbi who the Rabbanut doesn't accept, and say, you know, someone gets converted and gets married, that marriage will not be recognized by the Rabbanut. For example, if their kids then want to get married afterwards and the woman was not originally Jewish, it's the woman who was the convert, then the kids will run into problems, but the state will recognize. The state also recognizes civil marriages of gay and lesbians as well. So, you know, it's an interesting thing, but you can't do certain weddings in Israel still.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions also. Rabbi, you mentioned Women of the Wall, and I was wondering how this situation has affected prayer at the wall, the Western Wall, and especially the Women of the Wall and the Masorti section.
Like the first few weeks, nobody was going anywhere. And, you know, so our part of the wall was empty, and the Orthodox part of the wall was almost empty. And then people started coming back, especially as Jerusalem has not only suffered a few sirens at the beginning and has been basically safe. There was actually at the Orthodox wall, I think it was last week, there was a big prayer service for, for the hostages and for the end of the war, etc. There was, I don't know, 40,000 people there. It's not an issue to go there now. Normally for us at the Masorti part of the wall, the egalitarian kotel, type of over the winter break, a lot of people come from abroad to do a bar bat mitzvah, the end of December, beginning of January. I'm not sure how many there were supposed to be in those 2 weeks, 150, 200 b'nai bar mitzvah. All the ones from abroad were cancelled, as were anyone who was thinking of coming from, from after Sukkot. Just over half the b'nai bar mitzvah, which is like, say 600 b'nai bar mitzvah a year, are from abroad, and like another 500 are from Israel. So the ones from Israel stopped coming at the beginning, but now every Monday and Thursday, there's at least one bar bat mitzvah at our part of the kotel now, and it's getting more and more. And people from abroad are starting to think about March and then Pesach, etc., etc. But it was pretty empty and very sad that, especially the kids from abroad. If you're from Israel, then so you were going to go to the kotel, but now you do it at your local synagogue or something. It's not the end of the world. But if you're coming, a kid from abroad, they're going to Israel for the bar bat mitzvah, and you can put it off a certain amount of time. But like in Corona, we had like people coming a year later because they'd learned their reading, so they wanted to come to the same parsha the next year, which was cute. But I hate to think what it's like for the kids to have to suffer that, to have this big party of going away taken from them. Of course, we will cater to, as much as we can, anyone changing the dates. As long as we have room, you can come.
Oh, thank you. And my second question, you alluded to, well, you mentioned the rabbis coming over, but I know from the States, a lot of individuals have gone over to volunteer, some speaking Hebrew, some not.
Yeah.
And they have been on the farms helping to bring in the crop, as well as on the IDF bases, doing whatever there. And I was wondering if this had caused any problems with not just within the movement, but within the general public.
I think it's great that the people come over. It's like I think it's only positive. Unfortunately, we at Masorti don't have our own, volunteer-heavy activities to offer. But we're very happy to point people in the right direction. We've obviously people come to the prayer circle, and any group that we know is coming, or any individual rabbi or leader who's coming, we make sure they get to the prayer circle. And one of the things, because we work very closely with the Hostage Family Forum, having set up the prayer circle, we can arrange for any group that's coming to meet with families on individual, like they have a building nearby with an auditorium that they use. And so we can get in 20 people or 50 people and come and hear from the families of, which has been very powerful. I've been a few times, and it's really powerful. And then if people want to volunteer, we can put them in touch with whoever. And actually, you're talking about going to bring in the crops and things. I'm going with my shul in Rehovot this coming Tuesday to my sister's kibbutz, which has been evacuated. So my mum, my sister and brother-in-law live on the kibbutz. They brought up 4 kids there. They all moved out. My mum moved there a few years ago, and they are 2.5 miles from the border with Gaza. They were in their safe rooms for over 24 hours that Shabbat day until the following morning, and then they could move out, but not go outside the building until they were evacuated just after lunch. And so we're actually going to my sister's kibbutz to help with the avocado harvest, which for me is really special that Mikie decided that's where they wanted to go, even though I'm not the rabbi anymore. And of course I will join them because they're going there. So we can help put people in touch. That's one thing. Well, we don't have the volunteering ourselves, but we know what's going on. Our people in our kehilot know what's going on. So if you have someone to stay with in Haifa, then we can see what's around there that you can do. And I think that's the best. It's like what we try to say is we can do very well 1, 2, and 3. We can also do 5, 6, and 7, but we're not as good as that as the other organizations. So we will ensure that if we have people who want to do that, we'll put them in contact, and we'll concentrate on what we know we can do best.
Thank you.
Rabbi, I have one or two questions. My question, we have always heard the expression of there are no unknown soldiers in Israel, that the country is so small that you know where your neighbors are stationed and where they're, when they're called up, or your school teachers or such. So my question to you is, can you elaborate on that? And at the same time, I was intrigued by the program that you have going on for the 11th and 12th graders, and getting them ready. And speak also a little bit about the women that are in the Army. Do they do exactly what the men do? I just want some clarification for myself, and for maybe others have that same question. So,
first of all, I mean, I just think of so I don't have kids of my own, but my sister here has 4 kids, 3 daughters and a son. So her son, who is her number 2, he's in the Air Force. He was actually on call that Shabbat of Simchat Torah, and he was one of the first people up in the air because he was on call. And he actually flew over where he grew up, Kibbutz Alumim, my sister's kibbutz. He flew over there on a mission, and for him, and he could see something burning down below. Most of their kibbutz the houses are still intact, but the cow shed where they have almost 800 cows was very badly damaged. And whilst none of the members of the kibbutz were murdered, the 26 foreign workers who don't live on the main part of the kibbutz but a bit off, they were murdered by the Palestinians, people from Nepal and Thailand and perhaps 1 or 2 other places, which is heart-rending. These are people who'd come, some of them were just foreign workers in general, some of them had come to study in the cowshed about milking and all that type of stuff. And then the kibbutz members worked with them and ate with them and things like that. So it was very difficult. Whilst the kibbutz didn't suffer like others in the area. But so my nephew is in the Air Force and up in the air a lot. Then my 3 nieces, the 3 husbands are all in Miluim. They've been in almost since day 1. They're getting out a bit more as time goes on, but they've all got small kids as well. Except for my youngest niece, who's now pregnant, please God, in May, she'll have her first child. But she's also in Miluim, in reserve duty, right? Because she was also in the Air Force, not flying planes, but preparing targets. And actually, there was one target she prepared, and she looked afterwards to see who had picked it up. They can see on the computer, where did the target I prepared, who was the one who carried it out? And it was her brother who carried out and for them, it's like looking after where they grew up. They suffered the Tseva Adom, the red alert sirens the whole time they were growing up. For them, this is really about their home. My oldest niece, who's a doctor, she says, do my parents understand they can't go back to the kibbutz? For her, it's like, that's the end. No one should go back. That's the trauma that repeats itself. So this is my experience of having people in the army, right? And everybody has that experience. And one thing that I'd like to mention, I know, just very sad, that so on the kibbutz that my sister lives on, Alumim, is a religious kibbutz. And so whenever I go there, I go to shul. What can you do? We have to sit separately, men and women. But so I go to shul there, and in the row in front, there's a family, the father, the oldest son, 22, and another son and a daughter. And, I just knew them to say Shabbat Shalom, and every time I was there, I would see them. And the kid, who's 22 years old, is in the army, obviously, and he's an officer. And on that Shabbat of the attack, so he tried to go back to his base, which was nearby, and he never made it back to his base. And, so whilst he wasn't killed on the kibbutz, but this is someone from the kibbutz who I know, perhaps not as a friend or whatever, but I would see every time I went there. And this is a family that's been brought into, into that group of families who've lost someone dear in the army. And it just brings home to you, yeah, this is just me. So whatever I feel, some people have it much more, and some people have it to a less degree. But we all know of people who've been affected, and I think that's part of our trauma as well that we're going through. Regarding women in the army, so until the last few years, generally women had specific jobs and they were not combat jobs. But over the years, because of equality and egalitarianism, etc., so women have pushed that they should be able to be in tanks, fly in the Air Force, and do other infantry jobs as well, and be on the front. And there are some women who are in Gaza as we speak doing the fighting. The units are set up especially so that you don't find one woman all by herself. And then there are women medics as well who could find themselves anywhere, and women doctors. The percentage of women is much less than the percentage of men in combat units. It's still, probably just a few percent. But more and more, and I think what this war has taught us is that it's just not an issue anymore. Women can be in whichever unit they are in, and they've taken part, and it hasn't caused any problems, in the fighting now. Also, a job that was mainly done by women soldiers was at the lookout post. So as you probably know, there were loads of cameras along the border fence, and they were all taken out by Hamas in one fell swoop. But there are soldiers who monitor the cameras to see if there's movement and if anything needs to be done. And a lot of them were murdered because their bases were right on the border. And Hamas took out all the cameras around the bases as well and just went in, and it was Shabbat, 6:30 in the morning, not just regular Shabbat, but also a holiday. And, most of them were asleep and just murdered them. And so women got murdered in the same way as men soldiers. So people are saying it makes no difference here, man or woman. If you can do the job, you can do the job. Sad that this is the way we have to find out. And as I said before, we're just working now on building a program for 11th and 12th graders. But as you can hear from just my stories, what I suffer, as a grown-up person who's been through death in the family and death of friends already, I can deal with this a little bit better, but 16, 17, 18-year-olds, this is not what they should have to be dealing with, yet they are. And how do you say to someone, go into the army, go into a combat unit, knowing that another war like this might happen in a few months' time after they start in the army? They're going to be frightened. They might be too running forward and doing things without thinking. All sorts of different scenarios that, I'm not the expert to talk about that, but these are the things that we're beginning to work on, writing the programs. We will have psychologists involved, we will have rabbis involved, we will have, teen educators involved, all sorts of people involved to see that we can get the best program, written up and then rolled out that will actually be meaningful to the kids and will be helpful and not just a lecture to them, right? Which is, young kids don't like to be lectured at. Neither do adults for that matter, but sometimes we know just to listen. And so something that we're very worried about on the one hand, but we think that together with, we want to collaborate as widely as possible on this, and to roll this out to as many people as possible, because this will be one way of actually dealing with the trauma that we're in now and the post-trauma that will come after it, and also preparing them for the army. It might just serve as a model for the future in general.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
I would like to, I have two very different questions or comments. So what you were talking about with the trauma, for me, I'm the child of a Holocaust survivor. And, after the war, my dad was in a DP camp for 3 years. And then he immigrated to Israel and he fought in the War of Independence, and he was wounded. His commanding officer got blown up by a landmine right in front of him. So, and he talked about, unfortunately, we didn't know any of this, about PTSD and dealing with trauma back then. And he said a little bit about that the Israelis before him did not actually accept the Holocaust survivors very well, that, they thought they went like sheep to the slaughter, and that he would go to a dance to try to meet a woman, and he would wear long sleeves no matter what season it was, so they would not see his tattoo. So, all of this is just, for me, it brings back of, wow, now I can feel just a tiny echo of, what my dad, had gone through. So I'm very glad to hear, that things have been learned, in the 80 years to recognize the whole population is traumatized, and this lovely program to prepare the young soldiers. So that was just kind of a comment, if you want to respond.
Yeah, so Israel has changed a lot, and a lot of people now are going back 50 years to the Yom Kippur War to talk about that. And did we learn anything from then? And certainly, I think the PTSD was learned a lot around soldiers who came back from the Yom Kippur War, more than the 6-Day War. But as a country, we seem to have fallen into the same rut, thinking that we are this superpower that no one will do anything to us, which is what happened in 73. There were pointers, but the government at the time didn't listen to them. And again, there were pointers this time, and the government of this day didn't listen. And whilst I do obviously have my political views, I think it's irrelevant whichever at this point which government it was. It could have happened to a left-wing government as much as a right-wing one, as it did back in 73. The question is, how can we learn again? How can we keep learning? How can we make sure that we don't fall into the same the same rut, the same problems as we had in the past? And that's where, as you know, for the last year, our country's been in turmoil. I mean, we're in turmoil beforehand because we went through loads and loads of elections, and we didn't have a stable government for 3 years, and now the present government, brought its, whether you call it reforms or anything else, judicial stuff, and the country has been so terribly divided. And whilst everybody's pulled together these last few months, but we're seeing now that the people, okay, we got to a certain point now. Can we continue where we left off on October the 7th with the struggle, internal struggle, or do we need to wait until the end of the war, whenever that may be? Or should this be a way of saying, okay, we need just to be together and find a way to renew how we can get on with each other? And so we're at a bit of a watershed where that's concerned as well. And can we learn from the past about how to deal with difference, or will we just repeat stuff that has happened in the past? That only time will tell. But one of the things Masorti is trying to do is to be involved in as much dialogue as possible, and to create programming now that includes people from different walks of life, people from different political ideologies and thinking, and different parts of the religious Jewish community, etc. And it's not easy. It is a big challenge. We, as middle of the road conservative, we can talk to the Orthodox, we can talk to Reform, we can talk to secular. We have common language with everybody, but but does everybody have the will, including ourselves, to actually speak that common language and try and get together? What are we worried about? Can we point to what we're worried about, and the other groups point to what they're worried about, and actually talk about that, and not just use it as a flag to fly against the others? There's just so much work to be done, and the question is, can someone pull at least part of that together? And we are strong, but we're small, and And I think we will do, and we will be successful to a certain extent where we can be successful, but it's not enough what we can do. But can we be a catalyst for others to join along that? And there are other groups who are in similar vein. It's not just us, obviously. Can we join up with those other groups? That there have been times where, yes, we'll invite conservative and reform, but because most of us are Orthodox, we're not going to allow them to actually do anything. So you're welcome to be part. So it doesn't work like that, as we know. Because you're trying to be inclusive, but you're still pushing people out. So, is there a way that we can all get together and like name what our problems are with each other and talk about them and just understand that, yes, there'll be differences, but we can still do stuff together. Sorry, Anne.
That's all very interesting. But when you talk about common language, I in my discussions with Darchei Noam, they don't know conservative, Women's League of Conservative Judaism, Masorti. So that was news to them. They didn't know the two-word terms were, so there is a cultural divide, there's a language divide, and I think that's one thing.
I just a lot of the Israeli members, like those who grew up in the States, know all the different parts of our stream of Judaism, if you like. But people in Israel, they just go to the shul that is egalitarian, and they're not so up on that.
And I wasn't aware that Kahila is for Dati too. When I say Kahila, I'm only thinking Masorti, and of course that's not true. So that's one thing. And Eshet Chayil, that's it. When we're talking about and I'm going to be reading about Devorah, Eshet Lapidot. I know Lapidim is the Lapidot. So there you go.
Rabbi, I want to thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We have just learned so much, and we just cannot thank you enough. Enjoy and have a good Shabbos, and
thank you.
Look forward to hearing what other great things Masorti and Israel is doing. Thank you. Now we can put a face with your name.